Happy New Year. Happy 2025. I'm so glad you're here and joining us today for the first year of the new year. Welcome back to the Small Business Mindset. If you're anything like me, the start of a new year can provide some thoughts of an overwhelm and excitement and all the things that come with that. And I want you to lead you through an exercise today through this podcast that talks about how to grasp the overwhelm and turn it into intentionality. Every year, I like to start the year with a new word that brings about these kinds of things. And you think about what does your world look like this year? What is your career and your financial life and your health and family and all those things that you want to accomplish? And there's not a better time to do it than at the start of the year. Joining us today is my dog Luke. So if you're watching me on YouTube, you can see him in the frame. He's my little trusty sidekick that usually sits at my feet and likes to sleep during the day when I'm working from home. So we have a neighbor dog right now that's outside barking, so he's going a little nuts. So he's going to join us today for our podcast. So hopefully he'll be quiet and just, show his face and his tail in the frame on occasion. So anyway, let's get back to this. So let's think about all the things you want to do this year. And to kind of get over the overwhelm, I want you to do an exercise with me. Now, if you're driving, don't do this in the car, come back to it. If you're watching me on YouTube or listening on any of the podcast stations, hit the pause button here in a minute. I want you to take 2 minutes. Maybe you set a timer. And I want you to get out a piece of paper, or even better, a journal or a notebook so you can revisit this later. I want you to do a brain dump. I want you to do a brain dump of all the things you're thinking about that are rumbling around in your head or your life that you think, I really want to get done this year. I want to get done sooner than later, or a year to 5 years, whatever it may be. Now, I know for me, and I'm going to take you on the next step in a minute. A lot of times I might think of that big to-do list, and that to-do list might include things like household upgrades. For example, this last year, we needed to repaint the trim on the front of our house, and it needed to get done. And I was putting it off because it's not something I could do myself or my husband could do ourselves because we have a very steep roof. So we needed someone that had a little more tools and tricks and things like that could get up there safely to do it. But it was one of those things that it wasn't in my face and it wasn't causing an immediate problem. So I kept putting it off, and I'm like, it needs to be done. I need to be intentional with this. So on the list it went. But things like that. It could be household updates. It could be car repairs. It could be starting a savings account. It could be earning a certain income this year. It could be rolling out a new product line or trying to get more clients, all the things. So I want you to do the big brain dump. Take a couple minutes and do that. Okay, once you're done, I want you to go through that big list you just made, and I want you to categorize the things you just written down. The things I use for my categories include finances, health, social life, social activities, could be travel, spiritual, career, and family. Now, you might choose to categorize these a little differently depending on what your life looks like. For example, you might not have young kids at home anymore, so maybe family looks a little different to you. You might not be an overly religious person, but spirituality sometimes to people, and to me too, it might mean, my purpose and how I am spending time with myself and doing some reflection time. So think about all the things you just wrote down and categorize them into those 6 areas, or more or less, as it works for you. After you've done that, this is why it's a great idea to write these down somewhere where you can go revisit. I want you to circle the top 3 things in each category that are most important to you. Most important to you this year. Because I know sometimes we put things in categories, they're wish lists, and that's okay. I know for me, I've been wanting to travel to Italy for a while, so that's been on my to-do list in my social category for travel for a while. And I know that that's going to be a big trip to plan. It's going to be expensive. There's a lot of details involved in it. So it keeps going on the list. And I think at some point, it's going to come down to, okay, do I buckle down and book this trip and plan for the trip and save for the trip and do the trip? Or do I look at something different? And that's okay. Okay, so we just circled our top 3 in each category. So you should have effectively 18 things that you can look at this year. That might still be a lot for you. Look at that list of 18 things. 1, what is the one thing you can start doing today to be intentional with those goals? One thing. Now you might think, okay, well, I I can't start saving $1,000 today. Okay, that's true. But one thing you can do today to move closer to that goal is, do you have a savings account open, an area where you're going to deposit those funds? Is it a separate account that you can open, maybe at a new financial institution or in addition to your current accounts, that is labeled and pocketed just for that purpose? That's the one thing you can do. Sometimes it's getting information. I know a lot of times if I have a goal, I'm going to use the painting the trim of my house. First and foremost, I need to find somebody to do the work. And then second of all, I didn't know how much that would cost. Is this a few $100s or 1,000? I don't know. So doing research and asking questions might be the best first way to get started. Is that something you can do today? All right. Now, as we're thinking about all of these things, I want to ask your why. So let's go back to that 18 again. I know sometimes I like to baby step it and bite size it down because I think for me that takes the overwhelm out of the whole process, but allows me to continually reflect on, okay, what have I accomplished and how far have I come? So think about those 18 different items in those different categories. You might have more under one or the other. You might have more in the financial category than you do in the spiritual category, and that's okay. So maybe that's where you focus a little more of your time. But ask yourself why. So the 18 things that you circled, the top three in each category, why do you want to accomplish these things? So I know a lot of people spend time on finances and they spend time on their health. And that's great. Those are two big bucket items that move you. Money makes the world go round, as much as I hate to admit it, but money gives you choices. And our health allows us the energy and the ability to get the work done to make the money. So those are very, very important things. So if we think about those two categories in particular, how can we be intentional in those two areas and ask yourself why? I know I ask a lot of my clients who are business owners, why do you want to grow? Why do you want to expand? Why do you want to make six figures or whatever the dollar amount is? Why do you want to add or expand? Why do you want to add a second location? Why do you want to downsize? All those things. Ask yourself that hard question because it might be different than you actually think. And that's being very intentional. This also might take some time to spend some time with those thoughts and with those goals to figure out the true why behind it. I know many times financial goals, and I for myself have always said, okay, I want a minimum of $10,000 in a savings account at all times. Sometimes that's higher, sometimes that lower, but $10,000 could help me fix anything from a home repair, a car deductible, a surprise, if I have to, we had to replace a water heater this last year, things like that. Maybe extra money for a trip came up and there was a great opportunity. And oh gosh, we can actually pull some money from savings to afford this. It gives us enough flexibility. But to get there, I had to ask myself some questions. Okay, why do I want that kind of money? Why 10,000? Why not just 1,000? Why not 100,000? I don't know. What does that mean to you in your life? By accomplishing that goal, what would that mean to you? Let's flip it for a second and talk about your health. I know I talk to a lot of people and they always attribute their health to their weight. I want to weigh 150 pounds. I want to weigh 120 pounds. I don't know, whatever that amount is. Okay, why? Why is the number important to you? Is it because you used to be that number? That used to be your weight? Is it because, okay, if I lose the pounds to get down to that, that will allow me to lower my BMI, lower my blood pressure, have more energy, my knees will feel better so I can go for a run. I don't know. Those are a little more concrete whys than a number. Because a number just says, okay, well, why? Well, maybe your body wasn't fit to be. So, for example, my body was not fit to be 120 pounds ever. So that's okay. I'm just not built that way. But I know for me, when I am a certain weight, I feel stronger. I don't have as many aches and pains. I sleep better. I have more energy. I feel like I can do more. And as I age, I want to make sure that I am as pain-free as long as possible so I can do the things I want to do. I can walk for miles and, travel and not without assistance and, sit in a cramped airplane for a while if I need to. But I also know my health has a lot to do with what I'm ingesting. And sometimes what I'm ingesting is not so great around the holidays. It might be a lot more sweets or alcohol. And so I think about, okay, how does that impact the number on the scale? How does that impact my energy? How does that impact the way I feel and look? Is it maybe, gosh, I hate feeling bloated all the time. I hate not being able to fit into my favorite pair of pants. I hate having to buy different sizes. And if I am buying different sizes, maybe I want to buy a smaller size versus a larger size. I don't know. And maybe just the reverse, maybe you need to put on some weight because you're not paying attention to your health, and you need to make sure that you're building, good healthy muscle, and you're looking healthy. So there's a lot of different reasons to do things, but I think whittling down and finding out the why is probably the most important thing you can do with these goals, because goals are just goals unless they truly mean something to you. And you can really think down deep and find the purpose inside yourself. I know my coach that I work with challenged me to say, what is your personal mission statement? And I'm still working on that. And I think it's hard because I think about, just like this exercise, all the things that I want to be for people and all the things I'm capable of and all the things I want to do. And it does cause a lot of overwhelm because I don't know always how to get started. And I see an opportunity and I know I can do it and I want to jump in with both feet, but then it might distract me from some of the other things that actually are probably higher up on that list and probably I need to prioritize and be more intentional with, because I'll see bigger leaps forward. So this is the time of year where I think it's great. Maybe we have a little bit more time off of work. Maybe we have a little more quiet time away from clients. I know this time of year tends to be a little bit more, inconsistent with client meetings. So I have a little more free hours and minutes in the day where I can think about these things. But I challenge you, look at your calendar and calendar off some quiet time. It might be 30 minutes in the morning or a longer lunch or in the evening where you have some time by yourself to reflect, to think, to revisit these things. And that's the intentionality part of the process. If you write it down, categorize, identify, and focus on that one thing, and you revisit and you internalize and you look at it again, the purpose and the why will come. And it'll come to you at weird, bizarre times. And the why and the purpose might be totally different than the actual goal. So, your goal for having a financial goal, the why behind it might be something in your family category, or might be something in your spirituality category that has nothing to do with the finances, but it has an impact over time. So, how's that for a deep thought moment? All right. Let's get back to intentionality and what we can do with these goals. The next thing I want to talk about is, who do you share these goals with? I go back and forth over time with this. This is where it's a hard thing to really think about when you think about how you share your goals with people. Now, I've learned over time is not everyone in your life, hopefully everyone in your life is a wonderful part of your life, and hopefully everyone in your life brings you joy in some part, and you bring them joy in some part. And the relationship you have with them is a mutual, consensual relationship that I love spending time with these people in different ways, and they bring you joy and all that stuff. It doesn't mean that that person or people are the best people to share goals with or share certain goals with. And let me give you an example. I know I love my husband to death, and he is wonderful sounding board for me. But I also know that him and I are in very different industries. So our area of expertise is very different. And I know sometimes when I'm looking for to bounce ideas off of somebody, he's a great person to start with because he's here. He's here in my home, and we see each other every day and we have great conversations. But I realize that sometimes his advice or his guidance, although, very much thought out and very much, is very important to me, it may not be advice that I need to take for my business because he's not an expert in my business and I'm not an expert in his. And that's okay. It doesn't mean I need to say, no, your advice doesn't matter to me, because it does. But it has to do with how I take that and implement it into my goals. Because at the same time, his goals are probably very different than my goals. Some of our goals are the same, similar family goals and travel goals and maybe spiritual goals that we have for each other, health goals that we like to set together. But some of the things that I don't necessarily bring him into the fold on and ask for his advice on, it might be career goals. It might be, I'm thinking about this, I just need to process for a minute. That's a lot different than asking for advice. The people that I do ask advice for are experts. So if I have a financial goal and that financial goal impacts my business income, my taxes, how I might categorize things, the best person I can find to ask for that is probably my CPA or somebody in the financial industry that I can trust and that can show me ways or give me some guidance on, have you thought about this? This is how I do it. A fellow business owner, how are they structuring their company to take advantage of different types of financial advantages? It might be, like I said, tax savings, it might be restructuring, things like that. And so be careful who you share your goals with, but be more careful about what advice you take back to you. I think it's very easy that you can receive good feedback, absolutely, but maybe the feedback is not something that you necessarily need, and sometimes it's hard to dissect that. You might have somebody in your life that's been a good friend, and they are a very strong personality, and you might say, "Gosh, they must know everything," because the way they're telling me you should do this, you should do that. Take a step back for a minute. Is that something you truly want to do? Does that fill you up? Does that feel good about going forward? Or is that their idea and the way they would do it? Another thing to ask yourself as you're being intentional with your goal setting in your year is this goal, if you're sharing this with somebody, is this a goal they would take on? And is your goal actually their goal? Is it truly your goal or is it their goal? I think a lot of times the people we surround ourselves with, we want to be like them, and we have a lot in common, and that's okay. But I want you to, this is where the why comes from. Is your why in fulfilling a goal truly your why? Or is it well, I feel like I have to because of the way they might look at me, or the way the public might look at me, or the way social media might look at me? I don't know. Does it truly bring you joy? Does it truly make you go, yeah, that feels good? That feels like something that I know I can do, and I can bring value in my area of expertise. I'm really good at this. I know I've talked before on previous podcasts about really finding what you're truly good at. And that's a little bit about your personal mission statement. Because what you're good at might be different than what somebody else is good at. You don't have to be good at the same things. And honestly, you might be good at similar things, but you might go about them in different ways. You might be phenomenal at making clothes, for example. You might be amazing seamstress, but the way you go about it is different than maybe the norm or how somebody else goes about that. Does it make it wrong? No, not at all. It just makes it your own style. And so being intentional with embracing who you are, and that's okay. I know as I'm talking to my daughter, who is a young lady now and is in a serious relationship, and we talk a lot about falling in love and finding your mate. And I'm a firm believer that there is somebody out there for everybody, whether it's a romantic relationship or a business relationship or a friendship. And it's okay to be picky with that. And it's okay to be choosy with that, but also to be open to letting people into your life and giving you some ideas, but making sure you keep it your own. All right. And finally, I want to ask yourself a question. Who do you want to be this year? This is outside of your goals. Who do you want to be? How do you want to express yourself? How do you want to show up in each other's lives? Do you want to be driven and forceful? Do you want to be open and welcoming? I know one of the things I love to do in my life is connect with younger people. And I do that a lot with the business school at our local university. And I love it when younger people come into my world and, we grab a coffee or they stop at my office and we have a conversation about what they're thinking in life and career choices and all that kind of things. And that does bring me joy. But I also know that I don't mind giving them, 30 to an hour long coffee or time in my office. But what I'm not willing to do is spend time with them every week unless that's something that I really want to commit to. I do like mentoring people because I think mentoring people and teaching others helps teach me too. And it allows me a time to express myself in a different way, to see things that I've gone through and uncovered and conquered. And it allows me to reflect upon that in a teaching moment, which I think is very important. But I think sometimes I was talking a number of years ago with an attorney friend of mine, and his focus is also on small businesses. He's like, I like working with small business owners because I'm a small business owner and the corporate side of law is not interesting to me. I feel like I can have a lot greater impact working with those small business owners and getting them on the right track and getting them set up and then seeing them flourish. I said, I wholeheartedly agree. He's like, but what I find over time and a lot of attorneys probably experience this, is that I'll get a phone call, and it's the initial phone call and or a meeting, and we'll have a conversation, and we'll understand, okay, what services can I help you with? What problem are you trying to conquer? What problem are you trying to solve? And we have a conversation. Okay, it sounds like I can be of help here. Here's how I can help. And he then outlays his fees and how he works and the expectation. And then, maybe they don't make a decision that day, sends them on their way. And then he says, then he'll get a call another week later and they'll have another 15-minute conversation. Okay, okay, great. If we want to work together, here's the expectation. And they call back again and they call back again. And he asked me, he's like, how do you handle it when you have somebody you're trying to onboard as a new client and they keep reaching out and they ask great questions, but they never actually commit? I said, that's a tough one. Now, an attorney gets paid a little differently than I get paid. They get paid on an hourly basis, but they have to have an agreement where they're charging for that. Versus he's like, I'm happy to give some free advice just to say, hey, this is how I work and this is how we could work together. But what I don't want to do, I don't want to give them all the solutions because that's my value. And I think sometimes we tend to feel like, hey, I'm helping somebody, which is great. But at the end of the day, if you're running a business, you have to get paid for it. And I know sometimes with me, I've been working with a potential client for the last few months. And I know in my world in commercial real estate, a lot of times people come to me because there's a property they want to pursue, which is great. So we start talking about all the ins and outs, what's their objective, what's their finances, the property, what's the goal, the timeline, all those things. Sometimes because of a lot of different factors, it could be they're not financially ready to move forward. It could be the space they want isn't yet available. It could be that we haven't come to an agreement yet. And so sometimes with certain clients, we tend to have multiple conversations. And sometimes those multiple conversations goes on for months because of whatever type of factors, timing, finances, the things I just mentioned. And I know for my time, I always want to look at how I spend my time value of money, because quite honestly, our time is our most valuable asset. So I think about being intentional with those conversations. I need to really kind of cut off those conversations, say, listen, this is how I can work with you. This is what I'm willing to do. When you are ready to take that next step, like I just lined out, then let's talk. Otherwise, it doesn't make me have any value and doesn't have you have any value if we're just spending and spending and spending, and all we're doing is talking about the what ifs and the what ifs. If you need to talk about that, then here's how you can communicate with me on that, and here's the expectation of time. I know I have some clients that love to talk on the phone and love to have a lot of correspondence, which is great. But I think you have to manage that appropriately and how that comes into your life. Because at the end of the day, if that does not result in a sale or income, is that the best way you are intentional with your time? Okay, I know we've covered a lot of things. And New Year's Day, you should be hopefully spending time with those you love, your friends and family, and celebrating the new year. Maybe you did that last night. But as we talk about being intentional this year, start with the basics. Start with all the things you want to do, categorize them, pick your top three, and then pick that one thing you can do today. Intentionality will allow you to get to those goals faster and feel like you have impact and success. And that's what we're after this year. Thanks for joining.